Imagine being in a room full of people, yet instead of feeling part of the group, you notice suspicious glances, conversations that abruptly end when you approach, and an uncomfortable atmosphere in the air. There's no open hostility, but an invisible barrier seems to separate you from the others. If you've ever experienced this, you may have felt an uncomfortable truth firsthand. Intelligence isn't admired in the way many believe. In fact, it often sparks rejection, isolation, and even resentment. But why? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most insightful philosophers in history, offers a disconcerting answer. For him, superior intelligence not only sets an individual apart from the masses, but also acts as an uncomfortable mirror, reflecting the limitations of those around them. And that reflection is not always well received. Society values wealth, beauty, and strength because these attributes are tangible, easy to understand, and often attainable. But intelligence? It's different. It escapes the control of most, as it can't be bought, inherited, or artificially created. Its brilliance overshadows those who are accustomed to the darkness. Instead of being seen as a gift, it is often viewed as a threat. The solitude of the brilliant mind Schopenhauer argues that highly intelligent people tend toward loneliness, not by choice, but by consequence. The German philosopher said that a person's happiness largely depends on the quality of their thoughts. For those whose minds transcend everyday trivialities, the world often becomes monotonous, predictable, and even frustrating. While many are satisfied with superficial distractions, the intelligent seek meaning, depth, and truth. This creates a gap between them and the majority, making communication difficult and, in many cases, unwanted by others. This pattern is not new. Great minds in history have often faced solitude and rejection. Socrates was sentenced to death for challenging the mediocrity of his time. Giordano Bruno was burned alive for seeing beyond the limitations imposed by the religion of his era. Nikola Tesla died alone, forgotten by a society that couldn't understand his futuristic visions. History seems to repeat a cycle. Those who see beyond the horizon are often abandoned before their ideas are finally recognized. The discomfort of comparison intelligent not only illuminates but also exposes. When someone demonstrates a higher level of understanding, creativity, or perception, it inevitably highlights the limitations of those around them. And few things are as difficult for a human being as confronting their own inadequacies. Schopenhauer observed that mediocrity defends itself through hostility. In a group, the person who stands out intellectually often becomes the target of ridicule or exclusion, not because they've done anything wrong, but because their presence unsettles the false harmony built upon conformity. The truth is, society prefers the comfort of mediocrity to the unease of genius. Independent thinking challenges norms, questions dogmas, and breaks with the familiar. And for most, this is not liberating, it's disturbing. The paradox of intelligence is that, while it's essential for human progress, it is almost always fought against while it's alive. The world that today benefits from the genius of Einstein, Darwin, or Van Gogh is the same one that ignored, ridiculed, or persecuted them in life. Intelligence on its own doesn't guarantee acceptance. On the contrary, it often provokes the opposite. And so, the inevitable question arises: how does one deal with this rejection? How can an intellectually distinguished individual find their place in a world that doesn't want to be challenged? It's this very question we'll explore in the next section. Because, while intelligence is often a burden, there are ways to transform it into strength, purpose, and, above all, freedom. If intelligence were just a matter of logic and reasoning, it would be easy to assume that a brilliant mind would naturally be admired. However, as we've seen, the reality is different. Society rejects those who think ahead of their time, not by chance, but by a deep-seated mechanism rooted both in the human psyche and the biology of the brain. Schopenhauer saw intelligence as a burden that isolated its bearers, but he did not have access to the advances of neuroscience to explain why. Today, we know that the human brain operates based on principles of safety and predictability. When an individual encounters someone significantly more intelligent, their nervous system may interpret this discrepancy as a threat, triggering discomfort circuits similar to those we feel when faced with a predator. The brain against superior intelligence studies in social neuroscience show that the human brain tends to react negatively when someone drastically breaks from the group's norm. The reason? Evolution has shaped us to trust and cooperate with our peers, and this trust depends largely on predictability. When a person displays intelligence far beyond the average, they become unpredictable and therefore potentially dangerous. Research by Michael Platt, a neuroscientist at the University of Pennsylvania, revealed that social interactions are heavily influenced by a mechanism known as the theory of mind, which helps us understand others' thoughts and intentions. However, when someone is significantly more intelligent, this ability weakens, creating a kind of cognitive barrier. In other words, the more brilliant an individual is, the harder it becomes for others to understand their way of thinking, and this can lead to distancing and rejection. Additionally, evolutionary psychology suggests that in primitive groups, cooperation was crucial for survival, and individuals who stood out too much could be seen as destabilizing forces. This instinct remains active today, explaining why many people react with discomfort, envy, or hostility when faced with exceptional intelligence. The fear of the invisible threat. Interestingly, this rejection occurs even when the intelligent individual shows no arrogance. The mere fact of someone possessing faster reasoning or a deeper understanding of reality can be enough for others to feel diminished. This phenomenon intensifies when the intelligent person makes the mistake of correcting someone or pointing out a flaw in their reasoning. For most people, this moment is not seen as an opportunity to learn, but as an attack on their ego. Moreover, there is a cultural component. Modern society pretends to value intelligence, but in practice, it promotes conformity. The figures celebrated by the media are often not great thinkers, but those who master the art of entertainment and superficiality. An individual who questions dogmas, points out inconsistencies, and challenges established narratives becomes a nuisance. The challenge of being an intelligent woman, if intelligence is already a factor of social exclusion, for women, the challenge is even greater. In addition to the natural resistance to superior intelligence, they face the weight of gender norms that have historically associated femininity with docility and emotion, rather than reason and leadership. Studies indicate that intelligent women are often perceived as less likable in social and professional settings. An experiment conducted by scientists at the University of Buffalo revealed that men tend to be less attracted to women who demonstrate superior intellect, especially when that intelligence directly challenges their own. This perception is the result of centuries of social conditioning, where the figure of the wise or visionary woman was often ridiculed or feared, just like the witches of the Middle Ages or the female scientists whose contributions were systematically erased from history. Even today, women who express strong opinions or demonstrate above-average intellectual abilities are more likely to be labeled in a derogatory manner. Society may admire figures like Marie Curie or Ada Lovelace, but only because they are distant. In time currently, brilliant women still need to balance intelligence with social acceptance strategies to avoid rejection. The crossing to acceptance. In light of all this, the inevitable question arises: Is there a way for intelligent people to integrate more smoothly without compromising their essence? Is it possible to overcome this invisible barrier and transform isolation into positive influence? In the next part, we will explore strategies for dealing with this reality. We'll see how great minds throughout history not only survived rejection, but used it as a springboard for impact and change. After all, intelligence doesn't have to be a burden. If used wisely, it can become real power. Given the difficulties and challenges imposed by the rejection of intelligence, the need arises to explore ways to handle this reality without succumbing to loneliness or discomfort. Schopenhauer's observations, alongside insights from neuroscience and social psychology, show us that society's reaction to intelligence is largely instinctive and not necessarily personal. So, how can intelligent people better navigate this scenario and turn rejection into an opportunity for growth and connection? First, it's important to understand that rejection is not a condemnation of the person, but rather a natural reaction to a discrepancy in the status quo. When someone possesses superior intellect, their impact on a group is unusual, which generates discomfort. This discomfort often does not reflect a flaw in the person's character or behavior, but rather the group's reaction to something that escapes immediate understanding or adaptability. Recognizing this helps depersonalize the rejection and prevents the individual from feeling devalued or inadequate. Strategies for navigating social rejection choose the right moments for deep conversations. One of the most effective strategies for dealing with the rejection of intelligence is to know when and where to share your ideas. In many social situations, philosophical or intellectual discussions may be perceived as a threat or a display of superiority. Therefore, it is crucial to cultivate the ability to discern when and with whom it's the right time to engage in deep conversations. By choosing a more receptive environment where people are open to exploring new ideas, it's possible to avoid passive or active resistance. For example, a curious mind might find smaller groups, more focused on academic, spiritual, or scientific discussions, where their intelligence will be valued and understood. This doesn't mean hiding one's intellect, but rather finding the ideal environment where it can be appreciated. Find communities with similar interests. Another important path is to seek environments where people share a genuine interest in knowledge. The internet has been a great enabler in this regard, with forums, social media, and specialized groups allowing intelligent individuals to connect and share their ideas without fear of rejection. These spaces provide a refuge where the pursuit of understanding is welcomed, not seen as a threat. By connecting with people who share your passion for specific topics, it's possible to form a support network and intellectual exchange that not only minimizes rejection, but also fosters personal and collective growth. Make knowledge accessible. Not intimidating. Intellectual wisdom shouldn't be a wall that separates others from us. On the contrary, one of the greatest challenges of a brilliant mind is learning to communicate its knowledge in a way that is accessible, without sounding pretentious or inaccessible. Richard Feynman, one of the greatest physicists of the 20th century, understood this well. He had a unique ability to explain extremely complex concepts in a simple and engaging way. His approach was to teach not just to specialists, but to anyone curious, making knowledge accessible to all. Adopting this simplify to clarify approach doesn't mean diminishing the complexity of ideas, but rather being able to convey them clearly and engagingly. This helps prevent intelligence from becoming intimidating, creating more bridges and fewer barriers between the individual and others. Historical examples of overcoming and adaptability. Feynman, Ada Lovelace, and Benjamin Franklin are examples of great minds who didn't hide their intelligence, but knew how to adapt their approach to be socially accepted, while also impacting the world with their ideas. They navigated the fine line between being true to their brilliance and fostering an environment where their ideas could thrive, influencing generations to come. These figures serve as reminders that intelligence, when shared thoughtfully and strategically, has the potential to bring not only personal fulfillment, but also meaningful change to the world. Richard Feynman was not only a brilliant physicist, but also a showman. He had a unique ability to make science fun and accessible, using humor and simple language to draw even the most inexperienced people into the fascinating world of physics. His infectious enthusiasm and skill in simplifying the complex made him an adored figure, proving that intelligence doesn't have to be elitist. Ada Lovelace, one of the pioneers of computing, was recognized much later, but her way of thinking far exceeded the boundaries of her time. She didn't hold back, challenging gender norms and embracing her role as a visionary in mathematics and computing. Even in a male-dominated environment, she found her place, using her intellect to shape the future. Benjamin Franklin was a man of many talents, but perhaps his greatest was his ability to navigate the complex social dynamics of his time. Although he was one of the greatest thinkers and inventors of his era, Franklin knew how to use his intelligence pragmatically, building relationships and influence through his diplomatic skills, humor, and, of course, knowledge. These historical examples show us that being a brilliant mind doesn't mean hiding your intelligence, but learning to use those qualities strategically. They didn't succumb to conformity, but they also knew how to adapt to the social norms of their eras. The secret was in how they presented their ideas, when they chose the right moments, and how they built bridges, not barriers, with others. Why does society recognize geniuses only after their death? History has shown that great minds are often rejected in their lifetime, but celebrated only after their death. Why does this happen? Schopenhauer pointed out that intelligence is often misunderstood and feared while it's still alive. Once the genius passes away, they become a symbolic figure, someone whose ideas can be consumed without the threat of confronting others' intellectual limitations. Posthumous recognition is, to some extent, society's way of reconciling the pain of having rejected a genius with the need to glorify their achievements. The power of adapted wisdom. Intelligence doesn't have to be a burden, and society's rejection doesn't have to be the end. With patience, discernment, and the ability to adapt, it is possible not only to survive rejection, but to use it as fuel to deeply and lastingly impact the world. The examples of Feynman, Lovelace, and Franklin show us that for those willing to learn the art of adaptation, intelligence can be both a blessing and a force for social transformation. The secret isn't in hiding intellect, but in knowing when and how to use it to create connection, influence, and, above all, change.